Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. I had clocked out late that Friday, the weight of deadlines and office politics clinging to me like a heavy fog. As I pulled into the driveway, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over our home. It was the kind of evening where the air felt thick with expectation, and I could smell the faintest hint of autumn creeping in. The familiar scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, a ritual of comfort that my wife, Sarah, had maintained through the years. But as I stepped inside, the usual warmth felt distant, almost suffocating. "Hey, honey," Sarah called from the kitchen, her voice light, almost cheerful. I forced a smile and followed the sound. She stood at the counter, slicing a loaf of bread with a precision that felt oddly rehearsed. Her long brown hair was pulled back into a loose bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face, giving her an almost ethereal look. "Long day?" she asked, glancing up at me, her eyes momentarily sparkling before shifting back to her task. "Yeah, you know how it is. Meetings and more meetings," I replied, trying to shake off the day's stress. I could feel the tension in my shoulders begin to melt away at the sight of her. "Good to see you," she said, placing a slice of bread on a plate. "I made your favorite, tomato basil soup." "Thanks," I said, the smell of the soup reaching me as I walked toward her. But just as I reached for the bowl, something caught my eye, an envelope peeking out from under the stack of bills on the kitchen table. My heart raced as I reached for it, the bold letters spelling out, "Weekend Getaway." My gut twisted as I opened it. The words blurred as I read about a trip planned for Sarah and her boss, Mark, to a cozy cabin in the mountains. "Sarah, what is this?" I asked, my voice rising, disbelief wrapping around my words. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "Oh, I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That you're leaving for a weekend with him." Anger ignited in my chest, hot and suffocating. "You know how I feel about him." "It's not what you think," she stammered, but the excuse died in her throat as I stormed out of the kitchen, the envelope crumpled in my fist. I could feel my heart pounding, the adrenaline of betrayal coursing through me. I paced the living room, the walls closing in as I tried to process what was happening. "I thought we had a good marriage," I yelled, unable to contain the hurt in my voice. "What happened to the couple who promised to stick together through everything?" "David, please. Just listen," she started, her voice pleading, but I was too far gone. "Listen to what?" "That you're throwing our marriage away for a weekend with your younger boss." I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my tone. "What do you even see in him?" "He's ambitious, and he makes me feel wanted," she shot back, her eyes flashing with defiance. "You don't even notice me anymore." I felt my breath catch, her words cutting deep. "You think I don't notice? I'm the one working late to provide for this family. We raised our kids, and now that they're grown, you want to throw it all away." My voice wavered, the weight of disbelief settling heavily on my chest. "I'm not throwing it away. I just want to feel alive again," she insisted, stepping closer, her face a mix of frustration and desperation. "This doesn't have to destroy us." "Doesn't have to. You're the one choosing this." I shot back, the anger spilling over. "You need to choose, me or him." Her expression hardened, the facade of innocence shattered. "I can't just give you an answer like that." "I'm not asking for your permission, David." "Then what are you asking for?" I demanded, my voice rising again. "Because it sure feels like you're asking for a divorce." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the entire foundation of our lives trembling. My heart raced as I stared into her eyes, searching for any sign of remorse, any hint that she understood the gravity of her choices. But all I saw was defiance. With a heavy heart, I turned away, the weight of her betrayal hanging in the air like a storm cloud. I needed to think, to breathe. I had always believed that love could conquer anything, but now I was left questioning everything I thought I knew. The hours dragged on after our explosive argument, the ticking clock on the wall echoing in the empty house like a metronome for my spiraling thoughts. I paced back and forth, the shadows growing longer as the sun sank lower. Each moment that passed felt like an eternity, and with every tick, I grappled with the weight of betrayal settling deeper in my chest. Sarah had retreated to our bedroom, and I could hear the muffled sounds of her moving around, perhaps packing for her weekend away with Mark. The thought twisted my gut tighter, a cold knot of anger and despair tightening its grip. My phone buzzed on the table, but I ignored it, more focused on the storm brewing inside me than the outside world. David? Sarah's voice drifted down the hallway, tinged with uncertainty. I hesitated, unsure whether to engage or remain silent. But her persistence cut through my wall of anger. "Can we talk?" she asked, stepping into the living room, her hair slightly disheveled, betraying her own inner turmoil. "Talk?" I repeated, incredulous. "What more is there to say? You're choosing to go away with him. You think we can just pretend like everything is fine?" She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. "I never said everything was fine. I just want to explore things outside of our marriage, see if we can find a way to make this work. While you're sleeping with another man?" I interrupted, the venom in my voice making her flinch. "How do you even think that's possible?" "Because I believe in us," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're so caught up in your anger that you can't see that I'm trying to find myself again. We've been married for years, and our kids are finally out of the house. I want to feel something different." "Different? You think that running off with Mark is going to give you that?" I asked incredulously. "What about the love we built? The trust?" "It's not just about him. It's about me and what I need. I'm not the same person I was when we got married." Her frustration bubbled to the surface, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, a mixture of desperation and defiance. "You're right, you're not," I replied, my voice low and tense. "But this isn't just about you anymore. You're tearing apart everything we've built." "David, please," she pleaded, taking a step closer. "I'm asking you to trust me. I can still love you and explore this part of my life. It doesn't mean it's the end for us." "Trust you?" I let out a bitter laugh. "How can I trust you when you're about to share a cabin with him? You're playing with fire, Sarah. And I don't want to get burned. I don't want to hurt you." "I thought you'd understand," she started, but the hurt in her eyes only fueled my anger. "Understand what?" "That you want to sleep with your boss." I snapped, stepping back, my heart racing with the mounting tension. "You're betraying not just me, but everything we've worked for." "David," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I'm not betraying you. I'm trying to live a life that's fulfilling for me. You can't hold me back because you're scared." "Scared?" I was terrified, but not of losing her to Mark. I was scared of what this meant for our family, for the life we had built. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I turned away, running a hand through my hair, feeling the desperation clawing at me. "Maybe you should go then," I said quietly, the resolve in my voice wavering. "Maybe you should just leave and see what this new life feels like without us." Her expression shifted, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "David, don't say that. I don't want to lose you. Then stop making choices that push me away." I shot back, my heart aching. "You're about to make the biggest mistake of your life, and I don't think you even realize it." As she stood there, silent and conflicted, I felt a sense of hopelessness wash over me. I knew deep down that I couldn't stop her from leaving if that was what she truly wanted. But I couldn't help but feel that I was standing on the precipice of something irreversible. The weight of the situation bore down on me as the minutes ticked by. I needed to confront Mark, to make him understand the havoc he was wreaking on my family. As the night grew darker, a resolve began to form within me. I wouldn't let her walk away unchallenged, and I wouldn't allow him to take her from me without a fight. And with that determination, I turned away from Sarah, feeling the distance between us widen with every second that passed. It was time to take matters into my own hands. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, each second a reminder of the impending confrontation. The silence in the house was almost suffocating, amplifying the whirlwind of emotions brewing inside me. I paced the living room, my fists clenched, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could hardly wait for Mark to arrive. I needed to confront him, to make him see the destruction he was causing. As the clock approached 9, I positioned myself by the front window, heart racing as I waited for the headlights of his car. I could feel the tension tightening in my chest, each breath coming harder than the last. Finally, I saw it, a sleek black car gliding up our driveway, the headlights illuminating the porch like a spotlight. My stomach dropped, and I felt a mix of anger and dread wash over me. Mark stepped out, exuding an air of confidence that made my blood boil. He adjusted his jacket, flashing a smirk that seemed to taunt me even from a distance. I threw the door open, stepping out into the night, the cool air hitting me like a slap to the face. "Mark!" I shouted, the name leaving my lips like venom. He turned, surprise flashing across his face before it melted into that infuriating grin. Well, if it isn't the husband," he sneered, taking a step forward. "Here to give me a warm welcome, you think this is a joke?" I growled, adrenaline surging as I stepped closer, feeling the distance between us shrink. "You're here to take my wife away for the weekend while I'm supposed to just sit back and let it happen? Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic." "Sarah's just looking for a little fun," he said dismissively, crossing his arms as if he were addressing a child rather than a man whose marriage was crumbling. "A little fun?" I echoed incredulously. "You think this is just a game? You're tearing apart a family, Mark." His expression shifted slightly, but he quickly masked it with arrogance. "She's an adult. She can make her own choices, David. Don't put this on me." "Choices?" I took a step closer, my voice low and dangerous. "You're exploiting her when she's at her most vulnerable. You know what she's going through." "And what's that?" he shot back, a challenge in his tone. "A midlife crisis? You think I'm the first guy to come along and tempt her?" I felt the anger rising like a tidal wave, threatening to swallow me whole. "I'm not letting you take her. You think you can waltz in and swoop her away? Not without a fight." Mark chuckled, the sound grating on my nerves. "You really think you can intimidate me? I'm not scared of you." And just like that, the last thread of my restraint snapped. I lunged forward, my fist connecting with his jaw with a satisfying thud. He stumbled back, shock written all over his face, but it quickly turned into fury. "Is that how you want to play this?" he spat, wiping his mouth and charging at me. I dodged to the side, feeling the rush of adrenaline as I fought to regain control. "Stay away from Sarah," I shouted, throwing another punch. This time, I connected with his ribs, feeling the impact reverberate through my knuckles. He retaliated, landing a hit on my shoulder that sent me staggering back. "You're making a huge mistake," he growled, his face twisted in anger. "She'll come back to me, you know, not if I have anything to say about it." I shouted, determination surging through me. The rage within me fueled my movements, every strike a release of the pent-up frustration and hurt. We grappled, exchanging blows under the dim light of the porch. I could hear the sounds of the night around us, crickets chirping, the rustle of leaves, but it all faded away, leaving only the raw intensity of the fight. "David! Stop!" Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, a desperate cry that pulled me back for a split second. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, panic etched across her face. "Stay out of this, Sarah!" I shouted, my voice strained. I didn't want her to witness this, didn't want her to see the man I was becoming in this moment of desperation. But Mark seized the opportunity, shoving me hard. I lost my balance and stumbled back, crashing against the railing. Before I could recover, he lunged at me, fists flying. I ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding a blow that could have sent me reeling. "David, please!" Sarah cried again, stepping forward, but I was too caught up in the fight to listen. With a surge of energy, I pushed him away, landing a right hook that sent him crashing to the ground, unconscious. I stood over him, panting heavily, disbelief washing over me. I had crossed a line I never thought I would, and now, I felt hollow. I looked back at Sarah, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I did what I had to do," I replied, the gravity of my actions sinking in. The fight had left me exhausted, and all that remained was the realization that I had just shattered everything we had built together. As I stood on that porch, my heart racing, I realized that the night had changed everything. The lines had been drawn, and there was no going back now. I had fought for her, but what I had truly won felt like nothing at all. The cool night air hung heavy around me, each breath feeling like a weight pulling me deeper into despair. I stood frozen on the porch, staring down at Mark's unconscious form sprawled across the floor. The adrenaline that had propelled me through the fight was fading, leaving behind a hollow ache where triumph should have been. My fists were still clenched, but now they felt heavy with guilt. "David, what have you done?" Sarah's voice broke through the thick silence, a mix of horror and disbelief. She stood a few steps back, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. I don't know," I stammered, the reality of the situation crashing down around me like a tidal wave. "I just couldn't let him take you." "By beating him unconscious," she shot back, her voice rising, tinged with panic. "What if he doesn't wake up? What if we—" "Don't," I interrupted, my voice trembling. "Don't you dare blame this on me. He was going to ruin everything we built." "Ruin everything? Or are you just too proud to admit that you're scared of losing me?" Her words pierced through my anger, cutting to the heart of my fears. "I'm not scared of losing you," I snapped, but even as I said it, a part of me knew it was a lie. The truth was gnawing at me, an ever-present reminder of how fragile our marriage had become. "Then what was all of this for?" She gestured wildly at Mark's still form, her voice shaking. "What do you think this is going to solve?" I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of my actions bearing down on me. I thought I could protect you. I thought it would show you I'm still here, that I'm not going to just let him walk in and take what's mine." "What's yours?" she repeated incredulously. "You think I'm a possession? That you can just fight someone for me and it will make everything better?" "It's not about that. It's about you choosing him over me," I shouted, frustration boiling over again. "I fought for us, for our family. You didn't fight for us. You fought for your own pride," she shot back, her eyes blazing with anger. "And now look where we are." The tension between us crackled like electricity, the atmosphere thick with unresolved emotions. I looked at her, and I could see the heartbreak etched across her features, mirroring the turmoil inside me. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I said, my voice softer now, almost pleading. "I just wanted to show you how much you mean to me." "But at what cost?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You've just made everything worse." I turned back to Mark, who lay still on the porch, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. "What if he doesn't wake up?" I muttered, the gravity of the situation finally crashing over me. "You need to call an ambulance," she urged, stepping closer, her expression softening despite the fear in her eyes. "We can't leave him like this. This isn't who you are." "Who am I?" I whispered, feeling lost. "I'm just a man who's terrified of losing his wife to another man." "Then show me you care," she insisted, her voice steady now. "Show me you care enough to do the right thing." With a heavy heart, I pulled out my phone, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. As I dialed, the sirens in the distance became a haunting reminder of the path we were on. "This is David Bennett. I need an ambulance at my address." I spoke into the phone, my voice shaky. "There's been a fight." As I hung up, the realization of what I had done began to sink in. I had crossed a line I never thought I would, and now there was no turning back. The sounds of sirens grew louder, and I felt the panic rising in my chest. "David," Sarah said, stepping closer, her expression a mix of concern and heartbreak. "We'll figure this out. We have to. We can't let this destroy us." "I don't know if we can recover from this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You need to try," she urged, her eyes searching mine for a glimmer of hope. "You can't give up on us, not now." As the ambulance lights flickered in the distance, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. I had fought to protect my marriage, but in doing so, I had jeopardized everything we had worked for. Mark stirred slightly, groaning as he began to regain consciousness. I felt a surge of fear mixed with guilt. "David, he's waking up." Sarah's voice shook, and I turned to see Mark struggling to sit up, confusion painted across his features. "What happened?" he mumbled, looking between us. "Stay down," I commanded, feeling a wave of protectiveness surge within me, even as I wondered if it was misguided. "You need to rest until help arrives." Mark glanced at Sarah, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Did you call the cops?" "Not the cops, just an ambulance," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "You need medical attention." "Medical attention? For what?" "I'm fine," he retorted, trying to rise, but Sarah stepped in front of him, concern etched on her face. "Please, just stay still," she said softly, her voice calming despite the chaos. "We don't want you to get hurt more." As he sat back, the reality of the night began to sink in for all of us. This was no longer just about me and Sarah, it was about the consequences of choices made in anger, the fragility of relationships, and the fight for a love that was teetering on the edge of collapse. When the ambulance finally arrived, the lights flashing against the darkness, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I had fought for love but found only destruction in my wake. As the paramedics loaded Mark onto a stretcher, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had done had only pushed us further apart. "David, we'll get through this," Sarah whispered, her hand brushing against mine, a fragile connection amidst the chaos. But as I watched Mark being wheeled away, I realized that the fight was far from over. Our marriage was in shambles, and the road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges I was no longer sure we could face together. The weight of the night pressed down on my shoulders, and I knew that the real battle had just begun.